The spaceship descended slowly, its silver hull glinting under the light of the planet's twin suns. Cale watched silently from the observation deck, his heart pounding in anticipation. Today was the day new alien settlers would arrive on Earth, and he had been chosen as part of the welcoming team. He had seen pictures and holograms of them, but nothing could have prepared him for the one who stepped out of the ship first. Her name was Leora, and she was unlike any being Cale had ever encountered. Her skin shimmered with faint hints of violet and silver, and her eyes glowed softly in the sunlight. But what drew attention the most were her scars. Long, intricate lines ran across her face, arms, and neck, like a map of battles she had survived, a story carved into her very skin. Every person around her froze, staring with unease, curiosity, or even fear. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Look at her." "Those marks," one woman murmured. Another man shook his head and muttered, "She doesn't look normal." Leora's lips pressed into a straight line, but she held her head high. She had traveled across galaxies seeking understanding, perhaps friendship or even love. She had survived wars, her people's destruction, and 1,000 nights of loneliness. Her scars were reminders of strength and survival, but humans seemed unable to see past them. Cale felt a pang of sadness as he watched the crowd recoil. He knew what everyone else saw: imperfection, fear, something to avoid. But he also knew there was more to Leora than skin deep. Her posture was graceful, almost regal. Her movements were deliberate, careful, yet unafraid. There was a quiet confidence in her gaze that made Cale feel both awed and protective. As she moved toward the welcoming platform, the crowd parted reluctantly. Some kept their distance. Others simply stared. Children pointed, adults whispered, and a few laughed nervously. Leora noticed but did not flinch. She had learned long ago that judgment often came before understanding, that people feared what they did not know. Still, a small, hopeful part of her wondered if anyone would truly see her. Cale stepped forward when no one else did. "Welcome to Earth," he said warmly, his voice calm and kind. Leora's eyes flickered toward him, and for a moment she allowed herself a small, cautious smile. It was not a smile of joy, but a smile of recognition. Someone had seen her, not the scars, not the differences, but the person inside. The crowd watched awkwardly, unsure what to make of his words. Some scoffed, others whispered about human-alien boundaries, but Cale did not care. He knew that first impressions often lingered, and he wanted her to know she was not alone. She had survived so much, and she deserved more than judgment. Leora stepped closer, her hands brushing lightly over the railing of the platform. She felt the wind from the city below, a strange but comforting sensation on her skin. Earth smelled different, alive in a way that made her heart ache with longing. Cale noticed her pause and smiled gently. "Take your time," he said. "There's no rush. You're safe here." For the first time in centuries, Leora felt a flicker of something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Maybe Earth was different. Maybe she could belong here, even if just a little. But the eyes of the crowd reminded her that not everyone would accept her. Not yet. Cale, however, had already decided. He would not let the world's fear define her worth. He would show her that someone could see beyond the scars, beyond the alien features, and recognize the heart beneath. Leora did not know it yet, but the man standing there with steady eyes and gentle words might be the first human to truly understand her. She breathed deeply, feeling both nervous and oddly comforted. The journey had been long, lonely, and filled with challenges, but this moment, this first human who did not recoil at her scars, was something she had been waiting for. And perhaps, just perhaps, it was the beginning of a story neither of them would ever forget. Days passed since Leora's arrival, and the alien woman tried to explore her new world. She wandered through the city streets, fascinated by the bright lights, the smells of food from street vendors, and the laughter of humans passing by. Every small thing felt new and exciting, but the stares never stopped. People whispered behind her back. Some children pointed openly, and a few adults even crossed the street to avoid walking near her. Leora felt the weight of their judgment pressing down on her chest like a heavy stone. She tried to ignore them, telling herself that humans had their own fears and prejudices. Still, it hurt. She had hoped for curiosity, for kindness, perhaps even friendship, but instead she met rejection. Her scars, which told a story of survival and courage, were seen as something ugly, frightening, or wrong. Every glance of pity or fear reminded her of the loneliness she had carried across galaxies. Kale noticed the pain in her eyes. He walked with her through crowded markets, showed her the quiet beauty of the city's parks, and even introduced her to humans who were open-minded enough to see her as more than her scars. Slowly, he became her anchor in this strange, unwelcoming world. She began to trust him in a way she had rarely trusted anyone. One afternoon, during a cultural festival in the city square, humans danced and sang under glowing lanterns. Leora stepped into the crowd, hoping to join in the celebration. But a group of humans dressed in elegant clothing noticed her and immediately recoiled. One whispered loud enough for her to hear, "We can't be seen with that." Another added, "She's different. It's not safe." Leora's chest tightened. Her throat felt dry and her eyes stung with tears she refused to shed. She wanted to retreat, to disappear into the shadows where no one could see her scars, no one could judge her. She had survived so much pain, yet even here in a place she had hoped to call home, she felt unwanted. Kyle stepped forward, standing between her and the mocking group. His presence was calm but firm, radiating a quiet strength that demanded attention. "She is not what you judge her to be," he said, his voice carrying over the whispers. "She is brave. She is strong. She's kind. If you cannot see that, then step aside." The humans exchanged uneasy glances but eventually walked away, leaving Leora standing with Kyle in the midst of the festival. Her heart raced, not from fear but from relief. For the first time, someone had not only defended her but had done so without hesitation or doubt. Someone believed in her worth. Leora's lips curved into a small smile, fragile but genuine. It was not happiness, not yet, but it was recognition. Someone had seen her, truly seen her, and she felt the stirrings of something long forgotten. Hope. Kale offered his hand, and she took it tentatively. "Come with me," he said softly. They walked together side by side, away from the crowd and toward the quieter streets of the city. The hum of conversation and music faded behind them, replaced by the simple sound of their footsteps and the rhythm of their breathing. For the first time in centuries, Leora allowed herself to feel a sense of safety. She still feared the judgment of others, but she realized something important. Not everyone would reject her. There were humans like Kale, who could see past the scars, past the differences, and recognize the person beneath, and maybe, just maybe, if she allowed herself to trust, she could find more than safety. She could find friendship, acceptance, and perhaps even love. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet, Leora glanced at Kale. His eyes met hers, steady and warm. In that moment, she knew that she was not completely alone in this world, and that small glimmer of hope felt stronger than any fear that had haunted her for centuries. Over the following weeks, Kale and Leora grew closer. Every day he showed her small wonders of the human world: bright markets with colorful fabrics, streets filled with the aroma of baked bread, and quiet parks where the sun warmed their faces. Leora, in return, shared stories of her home planet, of oceans that glowed at night and forests that sang when the wind passed through them. She spoke of battles she had survived, of her people lost in war and the loneliness that stretched across centuries. Kale listened quietly, never interrupting, never judging, only absorbing each word as if they were treasures. The city around them still stared, still whispered. Children would point at her shimmering skin and scars. Adults would avert their eyes or murmur behind their hands. But when she was with Kale, the whispers seemed to fade. He never flinched, never looked away, never made her feel like she needed to hide herself. Leora found a strange comfort in his presence, a warmth she had not felt in centuries. One evening, under a sky filled with stars, Kale brought her to a small rooftop garden overlooking the city. The lights of the streets below twinkled like distant stars, and the air smelled of fresh flowers and evening rain. Leora leaned against the railing, watching, letting herself breathe. For the first time, she felt not like a stranger, not like someone judged, but like she belonged, even if only for this moment. "You know," Kale said softly, "most people are afraid of what they don't understand. They look at scars and differences and think it means danger or weakness. But that's wrong. You are more than what they see." Leora turned her gaze toward him, her violet eyes reflecting both the city lights and a hint of surprise. I've spent centuries hiding parts of myself to survive, she admitted. I never thought anyone would see me as I am. Kyle smiled gently. I do, he said simply. I see everything you've been through, everything you are. And I admire it. I admire you. Her heart skipped a beat. No one had ever said such words to her. No one had ever seen her as more than a survivor. More than a collection of scars and alien features. In that moment, a warmth spread through her chest, one she had almost forgotten. Hope, yes, but also something deeper. Something that whispered of trust and connection. They spent hours together that night, talking, laughing quietly, sharing stories of planets, people and possibilities. Leora began to feel a strange, liberating truth. Maybe she could let herself be human too. Maybe she could allow herself to experience joy, companionship, and even love without fear. Yet, a part of her remained cautious. The city's judgment had been harsh, the whispers and stares unrelenting. What if she allowed herself to hope only to be rejected again? What if opening her heart to Kale ended in pain, as centuries of loneliness had taught her to expect? Kale seemed to sense her fear. He reached out, brushing a lock of shimmering hair behind her ear. I won't leave, he said softly. I'm not here to judge or to leave when things get hard. I want to know you, all of you. Leora's chest tightened with emotion. She had survived wars, traveled across galaxies, and endured centuries of isolation. Yet now, standing under the stars with this human who accepted her completely, she felt something new, a connection so deep it frightened her and thrilled her at the same time. For the first time in her long life, Leora allowed herself to relax, to smile fully, to laugh freely. The walls she had built around her heart, layer after layer, began to crumble, not from force, but from kindness, understanding, and unwavering acceptance. That night, as they walked back through quiet city streets hand in hand, Leora felt something she had never felt before. She felt seen, truly seen, and it was a sensation more powerful than any battle she had fought, any distance she had crossed, or any loneliness she had endured. And deep down she realized that in Kale, she had found something rare and precious, not just a friend, not just an ally, but someone who could change her life entirely. The city had grown quieter as night fell. Soft lights glimmered in the streets, reflecting off the glass windows of buildings and the wet pavement from a light evening drizzle. Kyle and Leora walked together in silence, letting the peaceful rhythm of the city surround them. It was one of those rare moments when the world seemed to pause, giving them a space where nothing else existed but the two of them. Leora glanced at Kyle, her heart beating faster than usual. She had grown to trust him, to rely on his presence, but a small voice inside her whispered doubts. What if humans never truly accepted her? What if the scars she carried across her body, the memories etched into her skin, were too much for anyone to love? She had been rejected so many times across planets and galaxies that fear had become a constant companion. Kale seemed to sense her hesitation. He stopped walking and turned toward her, gently lifting her hands in his. His gaze held hers with an intensity that made her chest tighten. Leora, he said softly, his voice carrying a warmth she had never known before. I need to tell you something. Her stomach fluttered. She had a feeling she already knew, yet she was afraid to hear it. What is it? She whispered, her voice barely audible over the quiet hum of the city. I don't care about your scars, Kale said, his eyes never leaving hers. I don't see them as flaws. I see your strength, your courage, everything you've endured, everything you've survived. And I care about you, more than I've ever cared about anyone. Leora felt a rush of emotions she had almost forgotten existed. Shock, disbelief, hope, and a deep, overwhelming sense of relief. No one, no human or alien, had ever said words like this to her. Words that saw beyond the surface, that looked straight into her soul and accepted it completely. I've spent so long alone, she admitted, tears brimming in her violet eyes. I never thought anyone could care for me, truly. Kale's hands tightened gently around hers. You don't have to be alone anymore, he said, his voice steady and reassuring. Not while I'm here. I want to be with you, not because of who you were or what you've been through, but because of who you are. You are incredible, Leora. Her lips trembled as a tear slid down her cheek. She had fought wars, survived catastrophes, and crossed galaxies, but the hardest battle had always been learning to trust, to let someone see her as she truly was. Now in this quiet city street with the glow of streetlights casting soft shadows, that battle felt like it had finally been won. She whispered, struggling for words. I don't know what to say. I never thought I could feel this way about someone, or that someone could feel this way about me. You don't need to say anything, Kale replied, his smile gentle. Just let yourself feel it. Let yourself believe that someone sees you for who you really are. That's all I ask. Leora's heart swelled with emotion. For centuries, she had hidden behind her scars, her survival, and her past. But now, with Kale's unwavering acceptance, she felt a lightness she had never known. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Slowly, she leaned into him, resting her head against his chest. Kale wrapped his arms around her, holding her as if to shield her from the world's judgment. In that embrace, Leora realized something she had longed to believe. She was not broken, she was not unworthy, and she was not alone. For the first time in her long, lonely life, Leora allowed herself to hope, not just for safety or acceptance, but for love. And in Kale's steady, unwavering presence, that hope felt real, alive, and powerful enough to change everything. As the city slept around them, two hearts beat together, one human, one alien, bound by trust, understanding, and a feeling neither of them had ever expected, but both had always needed. Months had passed since Leora had arrived, and slowly she had begun to adjust to life on Earth, but not everyone welcomed her presence. A group of humans, uncomfortable with the alien integration and fearful of her differences, began to make their disapproval known. They whispered in the streets, avoided her in public spaces, and even mocked her scars behind her back. Leora tried to ignore them, but their hostility reminded her of centuries spent being judged, rejected, and alone. One evening, the city held a grand celebration in honor of interstellar cooperation. Humans and aliens mingled under strings of glowing lights. Music filled the air and laughter echoed from every corner. Leora had hoped the celebration would be a moment of peace, a place where she could feel accepted. But as soon as she entered the main square with Kale by her side, a group of humans confronted her. "You don't belong here," one of them shouted, stepping forward with anger in his eyes. "She's not one of us. She's different, dangerous." The crowd around them fell silent, tension rising like a storm cloud. Leora felt her chest tighten, her past fears clawing at her heart. She had faced danger across galaxies, survived wars, and endured centuries of loneliness. Yet the threat of rejection still made her body tremble. Kale stepped in front of her, his stance firm and unwavering. He looked the human straight in the eyes and spoke with calm authority. "You are wrong. She belongs wherever she chooses. She is stronger, braver, and kinder than any of you will ever be. If you cannot respect her, then step aside." The humans hesitated, unsure how to respond to his confidence. Some tried to argue, but Kale did not waver. His presence radiated a quiet strength, a force born of respect, understanding, and unwavering belief in Leora. For the first time, she felt safe, not because danger had disappeared, but because someone she trusted had chosen to protect her. Leora's violet eyes met Kale's, and in that gaze she saw courage mirrored back at her. She realized that she had survived countless battles, but this, standing firm against prejudice and fear, felt just as important. It was a battle not for territory or life, but for dignity, acceptance, and love. Slowly, the humans stepped back, muttering in frustration. They could not overpower the strength of conviction that radiated from Kale, nor could they ignore the quiet power Leora held simply by existing. The crowd began to murmur, some voices showing curiosity, others admiration. For the first time, Leora realized that not everyone would reject her. There were humans who could see beyond fear, beyond appearances, and recognize the courage and worth that lay beneath. Kale turned to Leora, smiling gently. "You see," he said softly, "the world can change. They can learn to see you the way I do." Leora's heart swelled with emotion. Centuries of rejection and isolation had left scars on her soul, but Kale's unwavering belief gave her hope. Hope that she could belong, hope that she could find acceptance, and hope that love was possible even for someone who had been so different for so long. That night, as they walked away from the crowd, Leora felt a new strength within herself. She understood that the road to acceptance would not be easy, that prejudice and fear would not vanish overnight. But with Kale by her side, she realized she could face it. She could face the judgment, the whispers, the fear, and still stand tall. For the first time, she believed that her scars, once a source of shame in the eyes of others, could become symbols of resilience, courage, and the love that had found her despite everything. And as Kyle held her hand steady and warm, Leora knew that together they could face any challenge the world might throw at them. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, the city began to see Leora in a new light. No longer was she just the alien woman with scars that frightened or intrigued people. Through her actions, her kindness, and the gentle way she interacted with the world, she began to earn respect. People saw her helping children, sharing knowledge of her advanced technology, and even rescuing stray animals from the busy streets. Her scars, once a mark of fear, started to be seen as symbols of courage and resilience. Kale remained by her side through everything. He never stopped supporting her, never faltered in his belief that she was extraordinary. He introduced her to friends who were open-minded, encouraged conversations that helped others understand her story, and always reminded her of her worth. Leora felt warmth in her chest she had never known. For centuries, she had lived as an outsider, but now, for the first time, she felt something close to belonging. One afternoon, Leora walked through a busy market, surrounded by humans who no longer whispered or stared. Children waved at her, adults smiled politely, and some even came forward to ask questions about her home planet. Leora realized she no longer flinched when someone looked at her scars. Instead, she held her head high, proud of what they represented. Every line on her skin told a story of survival, endurance, and courage. Those marks had shaped her into the person she was today, someone who had fought through pain and emerged stronger. Kale joined her in the market, taking her hand gently. "See," he said softly, smiling. "They're beginning to understand. They're beginning to see you the way I do." Leora's violet eyes glistened. "I never imagined this," she admitted. "For so long I thought I would always be alone, always judged. But now I feel like I have a place here." Kale squeezed her hand, his smile unwavering. "You always had a place. They just needed to see it too. And you taught them how to see it, through your strength, your heart, and your courage." Leora looked around, seeing the subtle changes in the people around her. The fear and judgment were still faintly there in some corners, but kindness and curiosity were growing stronger. She realized something important. Change didn't happen all at once. Acceptance was a journey, not a single moment. And she was walking that journey, hand in hand with someone who had never left her side. That night, Kale and Leora stood on a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The lights shimmered like stars, and the hum of the streets below created a soothing background. Leora leaned against Kyle, feeling a sense of peace that had eluded her for centuries. "I feel human," she whispered softly, a small smile forming on her lips. Kyle turned to her, his expression gentle. "You are more than human," he said. "You are extraordinary, and now the world is finally beginning to see it." Leora laughed softly, a sound clear and free. She thought about all the years she had spent hiding, fearing judgment and enduring loneliness. All of it had led her here, to a place where she could finally be herself. She realized that acceptance wasn't just about others recognizing her worth. It was about believing in herself, and Kale had helped her do that. As they stood together, Leora felt a powerful truth settle in her heart. Her scars were not a curse, and being different was not a weakness. They were the very things that had shaped her, strengthened her, and brought her to this moment of triumph. She had survived rejection, fear, and isolation, and now love and acceptance had found her. For the first time in her long life, Leora allowed herself to dream of the future. A future with Kale by her side, a world that could grow to understand her, and a life where she was celebrated for who she truly was. And as she held Kyle's hand, feeling the steady warmth of his presence, she knew with certainty that she had finally found where she belonged. Years had passed since Leora first arrived on Earth. The city that had once stared at her with fear and curiosity now regarded her with respect and admiration. Children waved as she walked through the streets, adults greeted her warmly, and whispers of judgment had been replaced with stories of her bravery, her kindness, and the strength she carried in her heart. Her scars, once a symbol of fear for the humans, had become a testament to survival, courage, and resilience. Kyle remained by her side every step of the way. Together, they had faced prejudice, danger, and countless moments of doubt. He had celebrated her victories, comforted her in moments of sorrow, and never once let her feel alone. Through him, Leora had discovered the power of trust, friendship, and love, things she had thought she would never experience. On a quiet evening, they stood on a hill overlooking the city. The streets below glimmered like a field of tiny stars, lights reflecting the life and energy of a world that had slowly learned to embrace difference. Leora breathed deeply, feeling the cool breeze against her shimmering skin, and for the first time in centuries she felt truly at peace. "I never imagined I could be happy here," she said softly, her violet eyes shining in the moonlight. "For so long I thought I would always be alone, always rejected, but now, I feel like I belong." Cale took her hands in his warmth steady and reassuring. "You always belonged," he said gently. "The world just needed time to see what I have always seen. You are extraordinary, Leora. Strong, brave, and beautiful inside and out. And I fell for all of it, every piece of who you are." Tears filled her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, joy, and overwhelming love. She thought of all the battles she had fought, all the loneliness she had endured, and all the fear of being rejected that had haunted her for centuries. And now, all of it felt like a path that had led her to this moment. Cale bent down, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "You are loved," he whispered. "Not in spite of your scars, not despite your differences, but because of everything you are. And the world is learning that too." Leora smiled, letting herself lean fully into him. Her heart, once heavy with isolation and fear, now felt light, buoyed by love, acceptance, and hope. She realized that her scars, which had once been a source of shame in the eyes of others, were now a mark of everything she had survived and everything she had become. They were symbols of power, endurance, and beauty. As they stood together, looking down on the city that had once rejected her, Leora understood a truth she had long searched for. Being different was never a weakness. It had been her greatest strength. Her scars told a story of survival and courage, and now they were admired, not feared. She turned to Cale, her smile radiant. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me, for staying, for loving me." Cale smiled, brushing a strand of shimmering hair from her face. "I don't need thanks," he said softly. "I only need you, and I promise I will always be here no matter what." The night sky stretched endlessly above them, stars twinkling in silent celebration, and in that quiet, perfect moment, Leora felt whole. She had survived war, rejection, and loneliness, and in return, she had gained love, respect, and belonging. Her story had been one of pain and struggle, but its ending was a triumph, a victory not just for her, but for anyone who had ever been judged, rejected, or made to feel unworthy. Leora had proved that courage, resilience, and the strength to be oneself could change hearts, transform worlds, and create love where it seemed impossible. And as she held Cale's hand, feeling the steady warmth and unwavering support, she knew without a shadow of doubt that this was only the beginning of a life filled with love, acceptance, and the power to show the world that being different was the greatest strength of all.